Well, I did what I was afraid I would do this morning. I neglected a couple of our teenagers in the process of speaking, and those are Elena and Evan. And I've watched them grow up. Evan waited on the table this morning, along with Jason and Raymond, and it's just really impressive to see the really good start these teenagers have made. We've seen Elena grow. I want a word of warning. Remember, it's just a start. It'll seem like a long way toward the end of your journey, but don't forget to stay in the harness and to stay in service to the Lord. Evan, we mentioned one student this morning. Evan is a week and a half, 2 weeks. He said the 28th this morning. He's headed down to Bloomington to learn something at IU. He'll probably change 4 times, but anyway, he's on that path. And I told him this morning we're going to miss him, and we are going to miss him quite a bit. All right. I like this picture. Actually, I think it's from a clothing designer. I thought when I put the picture up that I would name 2 or 3 of the ladies here that it reminded me of, but then I thought better of that. That might not be very smart, but I like it. 3 older ladies who are enjoying one another and visiting, and I think that's pleasant. But it has been a very difficult week for us. If I may remind you of 3 women. Jane Curry died last week, the wife of a gospel preacher. She suffered from cancer for 5 years, fighting it. She's been here, sitting right about where Nathaniel and Mandy are right now, at our lectures year after year. I've visited in their home. I spent a week with them up in West Lafayette when he was preaching up there. And she's been a faithful and good wife, raised 2 children who are Christians, and it's a sadness, I'm sure. I haven't been able to talk to Larry. I really didn't want to talk to him. It's not time. But she's a good woman. Just yesterday, I was at the funeral. Yesterday? No, Friday. The funeral for Mary Walker, Denise's mother, Rebecca's grandmother, and the children's great-grandmother. My family has known them since they graduated from David Lipscomb College, were married, and moved to Louisville, Kentucky. And my mother was remembering the 2 of them, her husband James and herself, walked in the door. We lived on Yale Drive in Louisville. Why I remember that, I don't know. And no, we didn't. We lived on Kalen, Mother. Yale was later. But they walked in the door and introduced themselves and began worshiping. And I know for a fact that they fought through difficulties in the church. They raised 3 wonderful children who are themselves raising their children. As Christians. And I don't know if they recorded. Did they record that sermon of Brother Earnhardt's? No. It was a wonderful funeral sermon. and so very appropriate for Mary Walker. Praising her in her role as a wife and a mother, and mostly as a Christian, diligent in the service of God to the very end. That was the second one. And this is the third. Debbie Barkus was married to one of my nephews. It was her second marriage. Her husband had been unfaithful. He had abused, they had 4 children, she had 4 children. He had abused those children. And they all, throughout their lives, would show the marks of it. They came to abuse drugs. Some of them became prostitutes or close to it, in a difficult situation. Her first husband was eventually murdered in terribly gruesome fashion. I will not describe it to you. Her second husband, as I indicated, was my nephew, Debbie Barkus, who had been a chain smoker all of her life. Left him for a relationship with a woman. I don't know whether they were married in the world sense of it. Her third husband is in jail for trying to kill her. I don't know whether she had a fourth husband. It may have been like the woman at the well. The one she was living with was not her husband. But she died as well this past week. Three women. I want to think with you about 3 Bible women who bring to mind these women that I've just indicated. I could, as I set up this lesson, my goodness, there were so many godly women I could have picked out to talk about. So many. But I want to talk about the one that I think was perhaps the most courageous of the group. And that's Mary, the mother of Jesus. You might read with me in Luke 1, verse 26. In the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God unto a city of Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin, espoused to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David. And the virgin's name was Mary. And the angel came in to her and said, Hail, thou art highly favored. The Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women. And when she saw him, she was troubled at his saying, and cast in her mind what manner of salutation this should be. And the angel said unto her, Fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favor with God. And behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb, and bring forth a son, and shall call his name Jesus. He shall be great, and shall be called the Son of the Highest, and the Lord God shall give unto him the throne of his father David. And he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there shall be no end. Then said Mary unto the angel, How shall this be, seeing I know not a man? And the angel answered and said unto her, The Holy Ghost shall come upon thee, and the power of the Highest shall overshadow thee. Therefore also that holy thing which shall be born of thee shall be called the Son of God. And behold, thy cousin Elizabeth, she hath also conceived a son in her old age. And this is the 6th month with her who was called barren. For with God nothing shall be impossible. And Mary said, Behold, the handmaid of the Lord. Be it unto me according to thy word. And the angel departed from her. The humility of Mary is impressive. She wasn't proud of the fact that she was being blessed by God. She wasn't bragging about it, that I'm going to have the Son of God. There was a humility to her. How shall this be? In Luke 1 and verse 46, Mary said, My soul doth magnify the Lord. My spirit hath rejoiced in God my Savior, for he hath regarded the low estate of his handmaiden. For behold, from henceforth all generations shall call me blessed. For he that is mighty hath done to me great things, and holy is his name. His mercy is on him that fear him from generation to generation. He hath showed strength with his arm. He hath scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. He hath put down the mighty from their seats, and exalted them of low degree. He hath filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he hath sent empty away. He hath helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, as he spoke to our fathers, to Abraham, and to his seed forever. And Mary abode with her about 3 months, returned to her own house. You remember the question Mary asked? She asked, How can this be, since I know not a man? She had only been espoused to Joseph. We would call it engaged. That went on for a year in their culture. And she would have been regarded in her town as an ungodly woman. A woman who had a sexual relationship out of marriage. And yet she was unafraid. That didn't matter. The courage of such a person is incredible. We run in our society over to Planned Parenthood to arrange abortion after abortion, hundreds and millions of children being swept out of our lives to avoid the opprobrium and inconvenience of an unwanted pregnancy. But that was not Mary. That was not Mary. That sort of courage is amazing. And this woman had it. In addition, she was faithful. She was faithful. Did you read this prayer that she said that we just read just a moment ago? My soul doth magnify my Lord. She was faithful to the Lord. In Luke 2, verse 39, when they had performed all things according to the law of the Lord, Jesus was about 40 days old as a result of this, and they had to carry him to the temple. They did that. They did it carefully. We spoke this morning of that lengthy trip they made. When they had performed all things according to the law, they returned to their own city. And the child grew and waxed strong in spirit, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him. Who's to account for that? You know, all of these kids here on this front row are above normal, right? And they all seem to be healthy and strong. And they're working hard in their school. They're getting a good rest. And who accounts for that? Well, it's their mothers. Their mothers are seeing to it. They're seeing to it that they have good food. They're seeing to it that they have good education. Many of them are sort of incredible in their Bible knowledge. That's what the teachers tell me. They're kind of amazed at some of these children. Why? Because of their mothers. Who is accountable for this? At least in some part, it was his mother. In chapter 2, again, in verse 48, You know, they went to Jerusalem when he was 12 years old. And lo and behold, he got separated from them. And then they finally found him again, and when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said to him, "Son, why hast thou thus dealt with us?" Haven't you said that to your children sometime? Why did you act like this? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing. He said unto them, How is it that ye sought me? Knew you not that I must be about my father's business? Who told him that? His mother. His mother told him about his father and his business. They understood not the saying which he spake unto them, and he went down with them, and came to Nazareth, and was subject unto him. He was subject to his mother. His mother was teaching him and loving him and letting him grow. But his mother kept all these sayings in her heart, and Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men. So she was a good teacher. He was growing. She cared about him. She was happy, and the child was happy. There's no reason to see an unhappiness in Jesus' childhood. And she had courage. Enormous courage. Why, goodness gracious, Herod was threatening them when he was a baby. They had to flee down to Egypt and live in a strange place for several years until Herod died, when they could come home. That took courage. Would you have done that? Somebody's threatening your child, you leave your home and everybody you ever knew and leave. And that doesn't even talk about the disgrace of the child's birth and other things. She was willing to lose. Oh my. She was willing to lose. In John 19, verse 25, now there stood by the cross of Jesus his mother and his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Cleophas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus therefore saw his mother and the disciple standing by whom he loved, he saith unto his mother, Woman, behold thy son. Then saith he to the disciple, Behold thy mother. And from that hour that disciple took her into his own home. Mary was at the cross. She was at the cross. At the foot of it, where she could talk to him and hear him. Can you imagine the incredible pain of that? The courage that it took to stand there. And then finally, being a mother was her greatest privilege. You know, some people are so proud of their success in school. They have a college degree. Some people are so proud of their success in business. Why, they've achieved some high level of success. But the greatest thing that you can do and be is a mother. A mother who loves her child, does her dead level best to raise him and teach him about the Lord. And you know, she didn't stop. In Acts 1 and verse 14, these all, about 120 of them, continued in prayer, with one accord in prayer and supplication with the women, and Mary, the mother of Jesus. She was still there. She was still faithful. But I want to talk about another woman, and like I say, you've probably already thought of 15 other women. But today we're only going to talk about 3. The next one is Ruth, the Moabitess. Ruth had been widowed. We forget about that. We forget about that. You know, there are widows here in this congregation. We mentioned them this morning. But you know, in reality, most of those widows have been left with some inheritance, with some ability to support themselves, with health care, some of them with homes, some with children to help them. But Ruth had none of those things. It came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi. The name of his 2 sons Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab and continued there, and Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her 2 sons. They took them wives of the women of Moab. There they were, stuck in a foreign country. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelled there about 10 years. Ruth was married for 10 years. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab. Excuse me, I skipped. Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them. And the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband. There they are, widows, strange country. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab how that the Lord had visited them in giving them bread. Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return unto the land of Judah. Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. And they said unto her, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people. Naomi said, Turn again, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there not yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, I should have a husband also tonight, and should also bear sons. Would you tarry for them till they were grown? Would you stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. They lifted up their voice and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her. And she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. When she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left speaking unto her. So they two went until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass, when they were come to Bethlehem, that all the city was moved about them. And they said, Is this Naomi? It had been at least 10 years. And she said unto them, Call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty. Why then call ye me Naomi, seeing the Lord hath testified against me, and the Almighty hath afflicted me? So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest. You know the rest of the story. I don't have to read it to you. She was childless. They all were now. That was almost a death sentence in this age What in the world could a woman do? She was an outsider. She was a Moabitess in Judah. But she was loyal in her love for her mother-in-law. She was willing to share life's hardships and life's blessings with her mother-in-law. She loved her. She was diligent in her work. You remember in our blueberry field, we've got about one more day of picking if you want to pick blueberries. And after that, we open up the field to what we call gleaning. There'll be a few more berries out there, but you're going to have to work hard for them. God had commanded the Jews leave the corners of the field for the poor. She was among the poor, and this was required. They'd have to go out and work for it. And normally they'd be around a bunch of men who were working, who might not always be as polite and kind to a single unmarried woman. She wasn't afraid to be poor. Some people are. They're terrified at the prospect. She wasn't. And you know the rest of the story. She was blessed to find a marriage again. In Ruth 4, verse 9, Boaz said unto the elders and unto all the people, Ye are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's, and all that was Chilion's and Mahlon's of the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren. And from the gate of this place ye are witnesses this day. And all the people that were in the gate, and all the elders said, We are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel. And do thou worthily in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem. And let thy house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife. When he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And the women said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, a nourisher of thine old age. For thy daughter-in-law which loveth thee was better to thee than 7 sons hath borne him. And Naomi took the child and laid it in her bosom, and became nurse unto it. And the women her neighbors gave it a name, saying, There is a son born to Naomi. And they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. And the Lord had chosen her to be in the lineage of Jesus. But there's a third. I imagine you guessed who that would be. Jezebel. Alan's been studying about Jezebel. She was from Tyre, Phoenician. Ahab, the son of Omri, in 1 Kings 16, verse 30 through 33. Ahab, the son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord above all that were before him. And it came to pass, as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that he took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Zidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. He reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. And Ahab made a grove and did more to provoke the Lord God of Israel to anger than all the kings of Israel that were before him. she opposed everyone and everything that did not accept those false gods. Later on in 1 Kings 18, which we've studied about, Ahab sends out, and lo and behold, the man he sends out, Obadiah, runs across Elijah. And Elijah tells him, I'm going to send rain. He went to show himself to Ahab. There was a sore famine in Israel, but he ran across Obadiah first. But Obadiah says this in verse 4. Obadiah feared the Lord greatly. For it was so, when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, that Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50 in a cave and fed them with bread and ox. Did you read that? She cut off the prophets of the Lord. She had killed them. She was willing to manipulate all of her husband. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had slain all the prophets with the sword. Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, So let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. He had killed, you remember after Mount Carmel, he had killed 450 of her prophets. And she's swearing vengeance. What a woman. You know about Naboth's vineyard, how she manipulated her husband, how she indulged his desires, his fantasies, his wishes. A wife doesn't do that. She doesn't manipulate her husband, and she doesn't indulge him in the ungodly things he wants to do. I'm not going to read you the story. It's in 1 Kings 21 about Naboth and his vineyard. But I will read you in 1 Kings 21 verse 17 what Elijah said about it. The word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, Arise, go down to meet Ahab king of Israel, who is in Samaria. Behold, he is in the vineyard of Naboth, whither he is gone down to possess it. Thou shalt speak unto him, saying, Thus saith the Lord, Hast thou killed and also taken possession? And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, Thus saith the Lord, In the place where the dogs licked the blood of Naboth, shall dogs lick thy blood, even thine. This woman was identified as a harlot. I want to read, this is kind of interesting to me. In 2 Kings 9, I think that's roughly where you are now, isn't it, Alan? Yeah. Elisha sent to Jehu to tell him that he's about to take over. When he came, behold, this is 2 Kings 9, verse 5. When he came, behold, the captains of the host were sitting, and he said, I have an errand to thee, O captain. Young prophet had been sent, excuse me. Jehu said, Unto which of all us? He said, To thee, O captain. He arose and went into the house, and he poured the oil on his head, and said to him, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I have anointed thee king over the people of the Lord, even over Israel. Thou shalt smite the house of Ahab thy master, that I may avenge the blood of my servants the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of the Lord at the hand of Jezebel. For the whole house of Ahab shall perish, and I will cut off from Ahab him that pisseth against the wall, and him that is shut up and left in Israel. And I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, like the house of Baasha the son of Ahijah. Lo and behold, Jehu comes to Joram in 2 Kings 9 and verse 22. And it came to pass when Joram saw Jehu that he said, Is it peace, Jehu? Jehu, there's a passage before this I love. He's headed toward, I've forgotten the city, Jezreel. He's headed toward Jezreel. And one of the men on the wall sees him coming and said, they can tell there's dust rising in there. Somebody's coming. Who is it? And they send out 2 messengers to him, asking, is it peace? And he says, what? Hush, I'm not telling you anything. Get in line. And he said, I saw my messenger get in line. Said, send another one. They sent another one. And finally, Joram goes out himself. And they say, is it peace, Jehu? And he answered, what peace, so long as the whoredoms of thy mother Jezebel and her witchcrafts are so many. Later on in chapter 9 in verse 30, when Jehu was come to Jezreel, Jezebel heard of it. She painted her face and tired her head. And by the way, that behavior is the sort of thing a woman would do to seduce a man in the old world. And looked out at a window. And as Jehu entered in at the gate, she said, had Zimri peace who slew his master? And he lifted up his face to the window and said, who is on my side? Who? There leapt out to him 2 or 3 eunuchs. And he said, throw her down. So they threw her down, and some of her blood was sprinkled on the wall and on the horses. And he trod her underfoot. When he was come in, he did eat and drink, and said, go see now this cursed woman, and bury her, for she's a king's daughter. They went out to bury her, but they found no more of her than the skull and the feet and the palms of her hand. Wherefore they came again and told him, and he said, this is the word of the Lord, which spake by his servant Elijah the Tishbite, saying, in the portion of Jezreel shall dogs eat the flesh of Jezebel, and the carcass of Jezebel shall be as dung upon the face of the field in the portion of Jezreel, so that they shall not say, this is Jezebel. There was not going to be any marker. She tried to seduce Jehu. She was cursed by God, and she was eaten by dogs. Now, the simple question for you tonight is this. Which shall it be? There's those eunuchs shoving her out that window, fed up with her. And here's the angels carrying these other women to eternal glory. What sort of wife will you be? What sort of mother? What sort of godly woman? If you're here tonight not a Christian, now's the time to start. Come while we stand and sing.